Following the surprise Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the American public did what it could to raise money for the war effort. Many Hollywood stars used their influence to help raise funds, with actress Carole Lombard enthusiastically throwing herself into the war effort. Sadly, Lombard died as a result of her endeavors, and her tragic death made her one of Hollywood's first casualties of the Second World War. Born in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1908, Carole Lombard had an easy upbringing. Following her parents' separation, her mother moved her and her siblings to Los Angeles, where they continued to receive financial support from her father. Initially interested in sports, Lombard landed her first on-screen role at the age of 12. She began to audition for more features and eventually landed a contract with Fox Film. At just 16 years old, she dropped out of school and began pursuing acting full-time. In 1927, Lombard became a Senate-bathing beauty, appearing in 18 silent short films across a year and a half. She considered this a turning point in her career, as it allowed her to score more prominent roles, including her first talkie in 1929. Following the release of The Arizona Kid in 1930, Lombard was recruited by Paramount Pictures. She wound up marrying the studio's leading man, William Powell, but their marriage was short-lived. They divorced after 26 months. It was Lombard's transition into screwball comedy that truly made her a star, with 1934's 20th Century skyrocketing her to fame. It wasn't long before she was appearing alongside some of the industry's brightest and rubbing shoulders with them at parties. One such event allowed her to reconnect with her future husband, Clark Gable, with whom she'd acted with several years prior. The pair married in 1939. While Lombard dedicated the majority of her time to their relationship, she continued to act on and off in the years that followed. When the United States entered World War II in December 1941, Clark Gable was the chairman of the actors branch of the Hollywood Victory Committee. He and Carole Lombard used their collective star power to aid the war effort early on. On December 22, 1941, 15 days after Pearl Harbor, Gable called a meeting of the Victory Committee, which was attended by some of the biggest names in Hollywood at the time, including Bette Davis, Ginger Rogers, Bob Hope, and Cary Grant. This event mobilized Tinseltown's elite. Lombard was eager to do her part to help American troops. In January 1942, MGM publicity director Howard Dietz asked if she'd be willing to do a war bonds tour in Indiana. She agreed, leaving Gable back in Los Angeles. Dietz advised Lombard not to travel by plane, as he feared the reliability and safety of aircraft. She listened to his advice for most of her trip, traveling through Indiana by train. For her tour, the Treasury Department had given Lombard the goal of $500,000, which she smashed. In one evening, she'd raised $2 million in defense bonds. Carole Lombard was due back in Los Angeles by train after her last tour stop. However, she didn't want to spend 3 days traveling and booked a flight on a commercial airline, WWII Flight 3, which made a stop in Indianapolis. On the night of January 16, 1942, the TWA DC-3 stopped to refuel in Las Vegas, which at the time was a small town with an even smaller airport. However, shortly after takeoff, the plane crashed into a small cliff near the top of Potosi Mountain, instantly killing all 22 people on board. Upon hearing news of the crash, MGM's Louis B. Mayer, Eddie Mannix, and Clark Gable traveled to Las Vegas. Gable, hopeful his wife had survived, stayed at the hotel, while Mannix went to the crash site. When he arrived with the rest of the rescue crew, a gruesome scene awaited them. The waist-high snow was sprinkled with blood and the passengers' personal effects. Their bodies were unidentifiable at first glance. Shortly after arriving at the site, Mannix sent Gable a telegram which read, "No survivors. All killed instantly." Supposedly, all he could find was a strand of blonde hair Gable always believed came from his wife. Clark Gable was never the same after his wife's death. In August 1942, he decided to enlist in the U.S. Army Air Forces and spent most of the war in the UK. Following his death in 1960, he was buried next to Lombard at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Glendale, California.